Caitlin, Yeo and Craig Morgan, thank you for coming on the show once again. How are you both?
Very well, good, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, both at once.
Yeah, well, Richard's here, so I'll talk as well. Hi, everybody. Great to see you guys again. And I can still see a little bit of musical equipment here and there in the background. And this is so interesting. We had such a lovely response last time because people finding that sort of, oh, yeah, musicians. Oh, yeah, they're people too and suffer and deal with a lot of issues. So it was great when we connected and you guys said, well, you know, we've got more issues again because we were an isolated industry. Now we're isolated and now we're not even working. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of complexities. So, Matt, what were you had some great stuff in mind.
Yeah, well, actually, Craig approached me. I thought it would be good to catch up and just revisit this topic because, as we were saying, you know, this is an industry and there's many industries like this, you know, where we're sort of working alone and there's that sense of isolation and the mental health impacts. And now, like we're in this, pandemic. And so not only are we in isolation, but we're also a lot of work is being shut down. So we thought we'd have a good conversation about how we're dealing with that. Well, specifically with screen composers, but then more broadly with the art world.
And we feel that this will carry over. I think this is a common human experience.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're talking about music is just because that's what you do, but I think it covers. There are a lot of people listening will hear this, and therapists as well who do a lot of work at home and online based on material and things coming to us. So speak as if you're speaking for everybody, because I think you are. So,
yeah, that's right. So before we started recording, Caitlin was telling us a little bit about the state of the industry. So Caitlin, maybe if you could rewind and just tell us again what's happening in your particular industry and where are we right now?
We're in a very precarious place. It's interesting because there are two possible outcomes of everything that's going on in the industry at the moment. We could end up coming out of this with a booming industry or a dead industry. Now, I don't want to be too dramatic about that, but there is a lot of things going on at the moment that's causing this kind of perfect storm of industrial relations issues and things that have compromised the Australian film and television industry's ability to work. Obviously, we have COVID-19 and the coronavirus, which has basically suspended all productions at the moment, other than, I believe, Children of the Corn and Neighbours. But those are both operating under strict isolation and quarantine
conditions, yeah.
Sort of restraints, yeah.
So, but obviously not every production can operate under strict quarantine conditions. You can imagine what you would do if you have a romance scene or something like that, you know, and also the size of productions can also affect that. So, yes, we've got that issue. We've got the issue of the industry was already in a difficult place prior to coronavirus hitting. We had the issue of, streaming services absolutely disrupting in large ways the current state of the industry, where many viewers are now switching over to streaming services such as Netflix, Stan and the like, rather than watching the broadcasters, the free-to-air TV so much. And the effect of that is that, broadcasters are losing advertising revenue, everyone's switching over to Netflix, and Netflix aren't currently under any obligations to create and Netflix and streaming services are not currently under any obligations to create Australian film and television like the free-to-air broadcasters are. So there's been a great big disruption of the industry there as well, and the industry is trying at the moment to find ways to deal with that, and has been compromised from that as well. So the combination of the fact that we have COVID-19 suspending almost TV productions and film productions, and the fact that due to the government has allowed free-to-air broadcasters to suspend their current content quotas and their obligations to show and create film and TV, Australian TV drama and documentary for the year, and who knows if it's going to go into next year. It's really basically compromised Australians to be able to tell their stories through film and TV.
Yeah, yeah. And we're talking, so you guys, obviously, you're film composers, but we've got, cinematographers, we've got directors, we've got all cast and crew. I mean, there would be a lot of people that are affected by this. Do you have any idea of the sort of numbers we're talking?
I'd have to do I should have done some research before this.
No, that's okay.
That's a very particular question. Yeah.
I should have come up with some numbers that are, I guess from the Australian Guild of Screen Composers, we're always looking out for the best interests of our members. So we always focus on our members first, but we do have a view to the entire industry. And we want to make sure that we sit within the entire industry when it comes to mental health issues and isolation issues. People not working, people in distress, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've just done a little bit of research, and I know that the screen industry does comprise of over 3,000 small to medium-sized businesses and employs over 41,000 people directly and indirectly in Australia. So that's a lot of people. In fact, I believe it's larger than the mining industry, but I could be wrong. And it's an industry that generates over $3 billion in our economy annually. And it's a large industry, and I think it's a lot of the things that have happened around COVID-19 and JobKeeper and the lack of our industry being eligible for that has made us feel like we're completely undervalued as a part of the Australian economy, but also as a part of the fabric of Australia itself. When something like this comes along and we all rally together, and I'm talking about Australia has done really well in showing that it has camaraderie and it can work together as a team to flatten the curve. And I think that's incredibly reassuring to be Australian, to know that we can come together in this way. However, the whole arts industry, not just the film industry, has been kind of left off the radar in terms of financial and emotional, aid.
Support. Yeah.
Yeah, this thing, because we've had this is what we're finding. The Australian government, more than most, have done some pretty good financial packages for business, and so great if you're in it. But there seems to be whole swathes of people, as we've seen with casual workers particularly. And I'm wondering how much of that affects yours. I mean, there'd be those who are sort of, I suppose, organised enough to be a business, and so therefore they can look at turnover. But quite a lot just correct, I know actors and things would just go from job to, you would go, when I was an actor, we go from job to job. Is that sort of the same sort of thing that happens with some of the musicians and some of those sorts of areas?
Absolutely. Nobody, the thing to be eligible for JobKeeper, and I know that some of it was expanded and many people have found a way to apply and receive it, but many have still not received JobKeeper. And one of the issues was, whilst they did lose all their work and they did go from an income to zero income overnight, they couldn't claim JobKeeper because they all work on a casual basis, and no one had been employed for more than a year at any one film because, films, production lasts for a certain period of time, then they stop, and then people open a new company for the next production. Yeah. So that was the crying shame of all of that is we have an incredibly skilled industry right now who want to tell our stories. And where are we all turning right now whilst we're in isolation? We are all turning to watching, TV, and we're watching Netflix, we're watching Stan. So now more than ever, we should be enabled to tell our stories.
Yeah, I interrupted you, Craig. I'm sorry. Just jump in, catch up on what you're saying. Because the other thing I was thinking is how quickly this one, it's quick to go out, but how quickly should it come back is another thought. But firstly, Craig, what you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking on the comment from Caitlin. So expertly presented there. The idea of an essential service. My heart goes out to the true essential services, to the fire brigade, to the officers, to the police people, to the surgeons, and to the nurses, and to everyone who does provide an essential service. However, not being an essential service, truly, as you know, when it comes down to it, I feel not as appreciated as I should. Even though, as Caitlin rightly said, where are we all turning? Whilst we have so many days and weeks to while away, we're all turning to the streaming services and to the binge options on television. And all of these options are made through this industry. People want to escape into a miniseries. They want to get swept up by a wonderful score. They want to remember a fantastic tune or theme after a movie or an experience. But at the moment, we just cannot provide that. And because we're not an essential service, it just seems like a real shame that we're not.
Because this has been very important for mental health. There has been a lot, just purely among practitioners, people saying, what can I do? And we've actually been recommending to people, here's a good show to go and see, here's a good thing to watch. So when you're saying it's not, that this stuff is not just entertainment, but it's social engagement, it's social involvement for a lot of people. Even the sort of more simple shows give people who are living on their own.
Yes, it's a connection. People connect via these experiences. Have you seen this movie? Oh yes, I've seen that movie. Then I've seen it too. So you connect.
Conversation.
And you have a conversation and you say, oh, wasn't that great? Wasn't it? It was great when this character did this. Or, the recent thing with Tiger King and, that phenomenon.
I'm yet to see it. I keep hearing about it.
It's this groundswell of people who have seen it, and it's sort of a zeitgeist that has its own life. But it just shows how like a well done documentary can really take over the cultural and political narrative in Australia.
Yeah. Now, Craig, you're very much in touch with the mental health issues in your industry. And so I'm just wondering, what are you hearing with colleagues? How are they handling this? What is the mental state of, first of all, screen composers, but then others in the industry who are out of work?
It's a good question, because it's a very difficult time. We as the Australian Guild of Screen Composers, we realised that this was a problem, so we instigated a call a friend campaign where we opened up an email service where any lonely or isolated or any screen composer who just wanted to speak to a friend, wanted to speak to someone, they could email us and we could call them back and have a conversation. It was sort of premised on the Are You OK Day ideal, and so this is something that the AGSC has rolled out, and it's ongoing, I believe. We're there for our people, and I think it's important for our people to know that we're there for them. I think it's, even though I haven't had many inquiries through that email address, I think the notion that we're there for you.
Right. Yep.
If you need a friend.
Yeah. Every single one is whether it's a lot or but whether they contact you, but then actually there might be those who are just going, oh well, I won't contact them because I don't really know them, but then I've got my mate over here. So stirring the gist, and this fabulous thing just from a socio-political thing that unions or the union of workers, the union of people, this is a real example of how when it's about people, we're not chasing money, we're about being united. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Caitlin, you are one of prominent Australian screen composer, and I remember in our last conversation, you can say even at your level, it can be boom or bust any given moment. Even at the sort of the top end of the game, how are you and your colleagues finding this time?
Most people had their work suspended.
Right.
And they don't know when it's going to resume as yet still. So what that essentially means is most of the industry and most of the top-end screen composers, even though we do work in isolation and we do have the ability to keep working through this time because we work on our own. It's not like we work in a shared office. We can close the door kind of thing and stay isolated. It's still most people were affected by COVID-19 and unable to work. I think we actually did a survey to our the AGSC did a survey to its members and to the wider industry and asked who was affected. And what came back was that 46% lost some work, 20% lost all work, 32% lost work, and it was suspended indefinitely. So that's kind of most of the people. If you add all that up, it's most of the people who were who filled in the survey. So it's basically everyone has lost most of their work or had their work suspended indefinitely. It doesn't matter whereabouts in the industry you were.
And you're suffering a bit of that inconsistency because I'm thinking now we can have events or we can have experiences, restaurants, maybe 20, 30 people in a reasonable amount of space. That's actually a fairly okay film crew for a project. It does concern me that you're being considered. You're coming in late. I mean, the regulations are changing. I mean, my sister-in-law is actually a hairdresser, and it's great she's been able to continue. But we've just gone through the whole time, and my wife's a massage therapist, and she wasn't, and it was just sort of like. There's some of these inconsistencies, but you guys seem to be first out and being a bit last in. Is that
I think there will be a
people?
Definite lag in terms of how long it takes for our industry to recover. And I think we will definitely need the support of government to ensure that we can recover from this time. We've got a lot of risk mitigation in our industry. We are a very risk adverse industry, and we have to be because, there are so many people involved in terms of, working on a production. So, insurance is a really important factor to that. And because, film productions can't get insurance that covers COVID-19 at the moment, it's an absolute, that just stops.
Just doesn't exist.
It just means you can't keep going because it costs so much to make a film or to make a TV series. Insurance is absolutely vital to ensuring that you can keep, that you can start a production and finish a production. And if you can't get decent insurance, then or insurance that covers all the current issues, you can't go ahead.
Yeah.
And I bet you
the underwriters
insurance is astronomical too, in price.
Exactly.
I'm sure it's really prohibitive.
Yeah.
So the other issue is obviously that with the suspension of quotas for broadcasters, we also have currently, everyone was lobbying for a set of options to be presented to government, which the ACMA and Screen Australia has come out with of a way that we can rejuvenate and revitalise and kind of reinvent our industry and how it works. So everybody is kind of getting on board with that and kind of currently writing submissions, including the AGSC, to government to open up those obligations for screen content quotas to also include streaming services and stuff like that. So hopefully on the other side of all this, there is an opportunity for much more Australian film and TV to be made. But right now we're kind of in one of those incredibly we're in limbo essentially, right, between an old industry and what is the unknown new industry that will occur after this time.
In theatre we very kindly called it a hiatus, which meant nothing was bloody happening. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing is that a lot is happening right now. I think what I've seen and amongst our industry is everyone is busier than ever. But they're not exactly busy just making film and TV. They're busy lobbying and figuring out how do we reinvent this industry right now. And what it actually shows is just how much of a resilient industry we are and how much of a creative industry we are, because so many people are coming up with incredible ideas of how we can all shoot and create film and TV in a post-COVID world, and also include all the new platforms from which we watch and digest screen content.
Yeah, and this is one of the examples of the things I'm saying, which is broadly for everybody listening. So whoever, whatever industry you're in, and this is a time for therapists to be rethinking and becoming not disturbed or distressed, but actually creative and responsive. We know out there restaurants are doing. We have a sort of a chain called Rashay's, and they've actually increased their income state by their responsiveness to takeaway foods. Sort of looking there. I know in various areas. So everyone, that was just an example of that. It is creativity we need now. It's not about how do we put band-aids on the problems, but it's my favourite thing, which is the book I'm writing, working on another one I'm working on at the moment, the possibilities. It's time to open the possibility space, to get off the rigidity that we've kind of got stuck into of we can only do it this way, to what other ways can we do things? We're in the drama at the moment, but this is the potential that's staring us in the face.
Yeah. And can I also say that in this context of, trying to formulate new ways and being creative and bringing this back to mental health as well. So I'm assuming that as, screen composers and others in the industry are trying to formulate new ways, that this is creating discussion, it's creating connection. And because we're social beings and we need that social connection, that this would in some way mitigate, some of the isolation and loneliness. Even though we may not be writing the next score, we're busy and we're communicating. It might be online and in social media. But do you see that happening? Is some of this sort of extra connectivity happening between your peers?
I know that I'm, as an example, for me, I've stopped looking to create movie scores because there's just simply none out there for me to score, and I've gone back to my roots in a band. I used to play bass guitar in a rock band a million years ago, and during this time I've got together with the lead singer of that band, and we've been writing a new song, and it's working out pretty good. I'm very happy with where it's going, and but what I'm enjoying most is the collaboration with my old friend, and
right. So that demonstrates a resilient response rather than sitting with no prospect of work and holding on. No, I'm going to score a film sooner or later and getting depressed about it. You're actually taking, a different avenue, different route, and I'm imagining that's going to be in the long run, a lot better for your mental well-being.
I think so. I hope so. I really feel connected, wanted, needed, and I feel like I've done something productive when I'm writing this new song, and I think it's a relationship that will last beyond this extraordinary time. So
yeah, it's sort of we've re-exposed ourselves to an interpersonal space through the bizarre aspect of having to be isolated. So this was the argument before that social distancing was the wrong term. It should have always been physical distancing. But two musicians can nut out some pretty good stuff 6 feet away from each other. In fact, if I remember, musicians mostly didn't shower a lot, so when I was younger, so we all stood a long distance away from each other. That's very insulting to musicians. I take it back. But actually, when I was 17 or 18, it was like that.
So I think
this is nice.
Being on the lookout for what would be akin to post-traumatic growth, I guess we could call it, post-pandemic growth. We're finding ways to grow through this.
Yeah, and because this is a trauma. I mean, a trauma is something. It runs in the thinking of the aspect of mental health. We have anxiety. We have demands from the world which are not resolvable, which leads to distress, and ongoing distress. As different from just the stress of managing something that we solve. But this ongoing distress becomes traumatic because it actually affects us biologically. And so this thing going on for all this period of time is definitely something that is a traumatic experience. And the degree to which it goes on and becomes a post-traumatic disturbance, or as Matt's saying, a post-traumatic growth. But it's also the other thing I think you're referring to, Matt, is that during trauma, where we're not life-threatened, we can actually turn on creativity and curiosity. Which is what I'm hearing everybody doing there.
Well, of course, and here we're talking to creatives, so they should lead the way.
I will say, though, I think it's there's been a lot of talk about, wow, you've got all this time, you guys can get creative now. And I think that puts I don't think that these are traumatic times, and it's not just COVID-19. It's all the other things that are going on in this world right now. It is quite extraordinarily it knocks the wind out of you, to say the very least.
It also turns off creativity. That's exactly what it's supposed to do.
And from all my colleagues I've spoken to, people have said this is not a conducive time to writing your best work. People all sat down at the beginning of this thinking, this is it, I'm going to do my life's work, and have come out of it realising how disappointed they are that they've only been able to complete maybe a small fraction of those original goals that they set out in mid-March when we first went into isolation. And I think that it's because, A, everyone's been thrown into the home together. B, we've got other, other responsibilities like children and family. And, whilst the kids in some states have gone back to school, not all of them have. And so all of that interrupts the immersive creative space that one needs to create something that they're proud of and extraordinary. So I've certainly found for myself that somewhere along the line, a couple of weeks in, I had to seriously reduce my overall expectations of myself, that I couldn't create the normal amount of output and the quality of output that I would normally do under normal conditions, because these are not normal conditions. And it may not just be physical influences around me, such as, children, family, isolation, inability to record musicians or go to the recording studio or any of that. It's also the emotional and traumatic conditions around me that has caused a complete compromise of my creative output as well.
Yeah, I know you've got something, Craig, but just quickly, so qualifying and adding to what I was saying before is, during states of high demand, that is what takes your attention. And that's what focuses your mind. And you need to do that. I've often said when the saber-tooth tiger jumps out from behind the rock, there's no point sitting there saying, oh, those teeth remind me of a C scale.
Or it's not time to write your next symphony.
That's right. So this thing between demand, so it's really post-trauma. Sorry, Craig, I just wanted to add that.
That's okay. No, I was just going to support Caitlin and saying, general life as we know it is a lot more difficult during this COVID time, and that should not be discounted in any way. It is real, and it's measurable, and it's affecting. So it certainly takes it takes the wind out of your sails. It takes the motivation out of your impetus. And the physiological as well as the psychological are influenced.
Yes, I've heard some interesting songs by some COVID songs by some great songwriters.
Have you?
Where it wasn't really a good song. It certainly was heartfelt and said what they wanted to say, but I thought actually that's a bit torture. That's a bit, but it was great to do it. But I thought, so this aspect, again, just spreading it out to our other therapists, to our other people, to therapists who are dealing with people who are coming in, saying, now's the time to get creative. And although I started saying that before, it's a very mixed bag, and each individual person is going to have their own level of focus that they're able to play with. And that's what you need to look at. What is distracting? What is withholding? What is containing their framework of creativity and curiosity?
Yeah. So maybe some words of wisdom to others that are in these sort of industries where, they're working solo, now they've got no work at all. So from, Caitlin and Craig, from your experience, what sort of advice would you give them?
I'd certainly think that even if you may not be writing your life's best work right now, or creating your life's best work, some sort of creativity, even if it's just 5 minutes sitting at the piano, absolutely can be very therapeutic right now. It doesn't even have to be for anybody. Yeah. It can just be for yourself. And I think that is a really great way to ensure that you're keeping your practice up and you're keeping that creative muscle going, even if it's in tiny little windows. But if you just reduce the expectation on yourself to create something extraordinary and just allow the practice of creativity to happen, I think that will be remarkably great for our industry. And I think that could be a beautiful growth, pandemic growth thing, where people may discover things when they've taken the expectation of creating something beautiful. Just remove the idea of it being a product,
Yeah. Exactly.
And just allow it to be for just yourself. And beyond that, I think that the idea of it being a product, we have found a lot of people wanting to continue to put output out there during this time, and so they might be streaming concerts live and they might be making things and putting them up on the internet. But the danger of all of that is that we start giving away everything we do for free. Mm-hmm. And then we set a precedent that art is free, ideas are free, and the whole idea of intellectual property has the legs knocked out from underneath it. Right. And that will be a devastating result for our industry if we continue to work for free. So I think it's extraordinarily important that also at this time, if you do choose to put something out there, we just think about creative ways to ensure that it is a sustainable business practice that you're doing right now as well, that we don't start setting up unsustainable business practices from now into the future.
Wonderful. Lots of therapists can listen to that exact same story. Craig, sorry.
Yeah, I second Caitlin 100% there. that is such an important insight. We should not be giving away any of our talents for free. I too have seen many concerts from individuals on piano and live streamed onto Facebook or whatever, and I'm thinking, oh no, what are you doing? You're giving away your music for free. What are you doing? And though it may have been therapeutic, it does set a really dangerous precedent. Mm-hmm. In regards to mental health and well-being, I would just say to any composer or any creative who is isolated, and there is lots of isolation because of because of COVID-19, that you're not alone, and that you can access help through Support Act, who are on 1-800-959-500. It's a free professional counselling service, and it's absolutely free to musicians and composers and the creative industry. And so that's sincerely my message.
Okay, and we'll put a link in the show notes for that number and for where Australians can get help. And for our American listeners, we'll also find some numbers where you too can get some help, and our UK listeners as well. Well, Craig and Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us here on the Science of Psychotherapy. It's been wonderful catching up, and I do hope that next time we catch up, the industry will be back on its feet and you'll be working away on your next projects. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I just enjoy having you guys on so much because each time I hear how different and unusual composers are, but how similar and sort of reflective of everybody's practice. We're all human beings doing stuff, and we can learn so much from each of us. So thank you so much for sharing your side of the story.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.